Hello guys, welcome to the channel. This is Paper Roll. In today's video I want to talk to you about the upcoming balance batch changes through June 27. I didn't have done a stream about it, and we'll be talking about Ranger class in everything. It's my main, obviously, everything that changes, what I think about it. And let me tell you from the start, I might be excited about a little few new things, but I'm very disappointed and I do not enjoy what will be coming, and you will understand everything and why, since I will go through every change in details. Now without further ado, let's get right into it. So to start with, they are keeping the same mindset that they worked with for like the past couple of batches. They're trying to improve the feeling of boon support build and giving the choice and flexibility generally in all classes to be able to apply quickness or alacrity as a choice of support. You don't need to leave your necromancer and go play ranger to apply alacrity. No, you can apply alacrity on necromancer. So quickness and alacrity simply is moving to be possible between different classes in the game, but not different builds. For example, Ranger will lose alacrity application on all specs except for Druid, because alacrity now is not applied from spirits, so you can use it on Untamed or Soul Beast or whatever. No, it will be applied through a trait on Druid. So this is the general idea, and I think it corresponds with the concept that we will not be getting a new elite specialization with upcoming mini expansion, as Arianet called them. So they want the current specs and classes to be able to do everything. You don't need to keep jumping between a class to another to feel useful. You can simply change your build on the class you are playing. This is the main concept. I myself don't enjoy alacrity and quickness this much because they bar creep the game a lot, and they have to be taken considerately in balancing, because as DPS you need to assume that people have alacrity, which means you will apply their skill faster, everything come off cooldown faster, which will affect their DPS, support and everything. So I don't enjoy those two boons exist in the game, especially alacrity. I wish if they would even be removed, but that's a personal opinion. Everyone feel free to believe what you want. They also trying to tune underutilized weapon, and Ranger, one of the biggest gaining profession in this, I guess, was changes to sword, as they promised they will be changing sword to a reliable power weapon, and what they did. And also that they will be introducing a DPS droid, which is a DPS condition droid, by the way. That's the one that came. And they will be removing more of the skills recharge reduction traits and rolling the reduction into the skill itself, which will be miserably a failure with Ranger once we get to it, and you will understand why. Now let's talk about the changes to Ranger. First, spirits got reworked. We don't know how exactly they rework. What we know is that they will be ground target casted, they will no longer targetable, they cannot be killed or anything. Now the spirit will trigger a smaller effect when summoned and slam the ground for more powerful effect. It basically do like a shake and then slam the ground for the effect to grant the boons or the effect that it do. It will no longer grant alacrity from trait or whatever, and it will do that and simply disappear. So will it still apply like the burning and blinding from the skill you used to control for it, like the second effect when it before it disappear? Will it apply this? Will it do it more or less? The only one we got to see on the stream actually was the elite spirit. As you see, elite spirit right now can revive up to 5 target and remove 3 condition when you activate the skill. However, on stream it changed 5 condition into boons, which literally different from what is now. So I don't know what the changes that will happen to other spirits. I guess we will have to wait and see. And if you trade them, they will do the second effect twice. That's all the change. That's all the trait will do. It will basically make the effectiveness bigger for the second boon or the second effect application. Now for the sword itself, it got changed from Monarch Cleave is removed, and they add a skill called Bounce instead of it. The sword used to look like that. Monarch Cleave, you jump to the enemy, you trigger second one for a dodge, you trigger the third one to reset it to the dodge backward, go forward, use it again, combine that with dagger. It's like a dance. It's very silly when you spam skills after each other, when you feel pointlessly using them. It's you jump, no dodge, and then dodge, use it again, use the dagger. So I hated sword, and many probably Ranger would tell you it's called underutilized for a reason. It had no place in damaging builds, it was only for mobility and simply spamming dodges for no value other than that. You would have to use it if you want another offhand weapon, or if you're stuck with a condition build, which part of why I didn't want it to be a power weapon, since we already have greatsword for power, mobility, block and evade. However, it is quite decent now. You can run it with power builds, with like Warhorn or Axe offhand. It could create a very good DPS build. We will obviously look into the numbers once they come to the game. Or you could run it with a condition build like with Dagger or even Torch or whatever. So how it works right now is basically second skill called Bounce, and it will deliver an attack with a leap for 450 range. Both skills are combo finisher leaps, which mean you have two now. It will do high damage, more than 1k. It's on 30 quarter second cast time. It can hit up to 3 targets. When the damage land, you will gain vigor. If you deliver this damage to a defiant bar like a boss, or a movement impaired enemy having cripple, immobilized or chair, or disabled like stunned or dazed, you will do 20% more damage. It is on 8 second cooldown, and the second skill on 16 second cooldown. Right now sword on 8 and 15, and if you trait it, you lower this cooldown by a lot. The lower of cooldown will be removed from the trait right now, so you will have the high cooldown, and obviously with this high hitting damage and efficient, I guess it makes sense to have a bit of increased cooldown to them. So the second skill is also a leap, but 600 range this time, and it is also a combo finisher leap, but this time it's evade for half a second, and it do even higher damage, 1k 100 as you can see in the picture, and it will apply cripple for 3 seconds and poison. But if your enemy is disabled, defiant or movement impaired, like it already crippled, chilled or immobilized, it will apply immobilize. It doesn't show on the tooltip how long is the immobilize, but it will apply immobilize. So as you see, it's a power damage weapon that have a lot of mobility and very decent. And like I said, you can run it with Axe, or you can run it with Torch, Warhorn, it depends on your build. And it's two skills with a very decent mobility that you can move with them forward as much as you want. Which means with something like Smoke skill, you could use one of them to stealth, for example, and use the other to move away, or simply keep kiting. You can use them back to back for simple kiting for more than 1000 range, like Greatsword. So it is really decent. It's a very good change, I guess, at least for bar builds. Now let's move from sword to go through few traits, and most of the changes for the traits, I would say most of them are quite good until we reach Druid. I mean for core rangers. For core rangers, they're quite good. Farsighted for a start, increase the minimum damage bonus from 5% to 10 in PvE only. This trait used to give you 5% for all your projectile and 10% if the distance between you and your enemy more than 600. So now the minimum increased to 10. So what happened to the maximum? I don't know. Maybe in PvE it will only be 10. It doesn't care about the range, which is decent. Obviously it's a buff. They added a trait called Stride Strength instead of Stride Defense. Like I said, the cooldown reduction for sword is removed, so it's no longer going to happen. And this trait will give you power when you dodge attack instead of quickness. That's how it used to work. And it will give you power points and additional power when you wield in a sword, which didn't used to do. So at least more power if you run it. Regeneration trait, you will find a lot of traits in Nature Magic have got some changes. So Regeneration, it's first minor. This trait will now trigger using a Beast skill. It's a skill that you control from your bit, or if you merged the main skill from Soul Beast. It will trigger regeneration on you. It used to be when you hit below 50% trigger regeneration. Now you can control where the regeneration will happen. Instinctive reaction, this trait will no longer grant quickness. It used to give quickness when you're hit also below 50%, and it give a 7% of healing power from your power. It will do the same thing of the healing power, but it will not grant quickness. It will grant again regeneration. And this multiple application of regeneration will fall very nicely with other changes that coming. Evasive priority used to have a cooldown. So it's a trait that every time you dodge on a 10-second internal cooldown, you'll remove one damaging condition and one non-damaging condition. The internal cooldown did not need to be there, obviously. If you really want to save your life, or if you're cornered, you can double dodge and cleanse a lot. Now this is actually possible, and it's a good design. A Spirited Arrival, this trait now grant might instead of vigor. So in this trait, when you swipe bits, you give everyone around you vigor and fury. Now it will be might and vigor. This is also to align with some change, because Druid will not be able to easily apply 25 might in support. So if you run in builds like this or trait like that, you will gain might from other sources, like from this skill, from Warhorn 5, from a bit like the Tiger, for example. You will have other sources to build might to allies. Since you got the might reduced, it's not really that easy to get 25 anymore, but the calculations and can it run 25 mites or not will be easier to do obviously once it is in the game. Especially we don't know how many stacks, we don't know how long the duration. Obviously the information we have is very limited. Windborn nodes is a trait to support Warhorn. It used even to reduce the cooldown, but not anymore. It rolled into the Warhorn itself. It also gives regeneration from the Warhorn skill, and it make every time you apply regeneration you get a healing effect. You heal yourself. Now this healing effect will work with allies, and that's why I said it's very good change for regeneration and instinctive reaction to actually grant regeneration. So this healing will keep taking from like a single reaction for everyone, for example, so it will trigger the healing for them. And it works very well for something like Healing Spring. It will pulse regeneration on every balls to everyone, so everyone get also the second healing. And that's not the end of it. So can you see with Lingering Magic, this trait now increases the effectiveness of regeneration you apply in addition to previous effect. So it used to only give concentration to you and your bit, and now will make the regeneration more effective. So regeneration heal better, you increase duration, you make it trigger another extra heal on allies, you apply it when you couldn't, so it's very pushing into the healing outside even of Celestial Avatar through multiple sources. And that's also not the end of it, since we will see more healing sources later too. So Protective Ward, this is competing with the healing source I'm talking about, which is Invigorating Bond. Protective Ward used to be every 15 seconds you get hit, you will apply weakness around you and you will get protection. Now it will trigger reworked and will trigger a lesser guard skill. Guard is a command skill that will make the bit guard the allies around it, basically taking 33% of the damage applied to them and gain might. So right now it competes with Invigorating Bond, because Invigorating Bond it changed. Instead of simply when you use a beast skill, the bit skill, it heal everyone around him. Now it will use for this healing the ranger healing power, and it will heal allies around the ranger, not the bit. And it will grant boons, which it didn't used to, and they are protection and vigor to allies. So in the first one your bit take 33% damage from allies to himself, which means he could die, and a glassy bit will very suffer from this. In the second one you will grant 33% reduction to yourself and allies from protection while your bit doesn't take any damage, and you will trigger vigor and you will heal for significant number since you use your own healing power and it happens around you. So I don't see any reason to take Protective Ward unless there is more changes, but Lesser Guard will be worse than Guard, and Guard is already kind of a bad skill to begin with. So since they are competing with each other, I say Invigorating Bond is obviously the best choice unless you're running Spirits, which will go with Natural Vengeance to make this trait actually got reworked. It now the Spirit will slam the ground the second time, like we said, it will do the second effect another time. But Protective Ward have no use. This trait is very bad right now. At least it used to give weakness, so maybe in rooming and stuff some people might run it, but right now it have no reason to be run. Now Trapper's Expertise is a trait that used to reduce the cooldown of trap skills, give you 60% efficiency on how the skill work. It's like regeneration for the healing trap, the burning for burning trap, the poison for poison trap, everything they do increased. And for the damaging one, they also put cripple, not the healing one. So they removed the cooldown reduction from it. First, that's a very bad design. That's the same thing that happened with survival skills. Now you don't need the wilderness knowledge in order to reduce the cooldown. That's not why we run Wilderness Node. We need the condition removal. We need the Fury, especially if you play in a power build. So you're still stuck with a Wilderness Survival trait, and you're still stuck with Wilderness Knowledge. In 90% of the situation. That's the same thing here. You still want that increasingly huge amount of burning or poison or chill for Frosted Trap. In PvE, it's very good trap to begin with. So you're still stuck with the same trait line choice, and you're still stuck with the same trait. It doesn't matter if the cooldown is on the skill or in the trait. But that's not it. There is more. Spike Trap got reduced cooldown in PvE from 45 to 25. Healing Spring, thank God, got reduced cooldown from 30 to 24. But all other traps did not lose on the cooldown. so they have the longer one. That's the same thing happened with survival skill. The last time they also made Sharp Install go to 30-second cooldown instead of 24. The cooldown reduction didn't get enrolled, and in PvE, Entangle also didn't get the cooldown reduction enrolled, so it's not 48 seconds, it's 60 seconds. So survival skill suffered, and the condition builds, the DPS, like you're trying to push Druid, for example, for all condition renders got reduced. And that's the same thing happened here. You don't need to take trapper expertise. Guess what? We still need, even with losing the cooldown, and simply all trap builds got nerfed, basically, for rangers. Now, Resounding Timber, this trait no longer reduced cooldown of command skill also, and it got rolled the cooldown reduction on other skill, but also was missing few things. For We Heal as 1, simply the cooldown reduced from 30 to 24 normally, but only in PvP and World vs. World, which means it nerfed in PvE. Second got reduced cooldown. Protect Me got reduced cooldown in PvE for different number and in PvP for different number respectively. However, that means it's kinda got nerfed in World vs. World. Search and Rescue got reduced cooldown, and as you see, Guard is not on this list. So that's it for that. Let's finally go with Druid, the one that suffers the most, I guess, or better if you different in opinion, I guess. Now, for Grace of the Land, the trait that used to grant Might every time you use any Celestial Avatar skill, you grant all allies around you Might, it now grants Alacrity. This is how they went with the Druid support build. Now you gain Alacrity from that. This is how you build Alacrity Ranger. Now, they put the Might into other skills themselves. Since this trait no longer grant Might, Regeneration Tide, skill 4 in Celestial Avatar, boulders here and around you in a water field, will now grant Might in addition to its previous effect. Natural Conversion, which I will be talking about a lot. This trait now grant Might to nearby allies every boulder. So we know it's still boulders, but honestly, we don't know if it still works the same, but we will assume it is and move on, since I will be back talking about a lot of details about Natural Conversion. Now, Primal Echoes, the trait that used to trigger daze around you every time you switch to Staff or Celestial Avatar, so both of them, and lower the cooldown of staff skills, now got removed and replaced with a trait called Blood Moon. This trait will daze nearby foes. It will work exactly in this point the same as it used to, but only when you become a Celestial Avatar, so it has nothing to do with the staff, and you can no longer reduce the cooldown of staff skills, if you can notice. And it will apply the daze around you as the same cooldown. It's 8-second cooldown, just like Primal Echoes, and will apply the daze in the same radius. However, it will also apply bleed to foes you immobilize or disable. So my understanding, it will trigger when it happens. So once you enter Celestial Avatar, for example, you apply daze around you. So those enemies you apply the daze to will also get the bleed immediately. Not like Ancient Seed, for example, used to work, you need a disabled enemy and then you need to hit them. No, it will happen at the same time. That's why you immobilize or disable, which also have an 8-second cooldown, which means any immobilize or disable will work. It doesn't have to trigger the trait itself in entering, which means it will not happen every time in entering, because if you hit someone with short bow 5, for example, that means you will trigger Blood Moon on them, which means triggers a bleed. It can happen to up to 5 enemies at a time. So if you're standing melee situation around a lot of enemies, it will happen to all of them. If you're hit a lot of enemies around you with Glyph of Equality, for example, it will happen to all of them, but it will go on cooldown 8 seconds, which means if you go to Celestial Avatar immediately, you will not trigger it. But if you stay enough inside the Celestial Avatar and then use something like Lunar Impact, that means you will trigger it. So how high is the damage? As you can see from the stream itself, it applied this for 1 second, a radius of 300, up to 5 targets, 8-second cooldown, 8 second 1 stack of bleeding for 176. Do you know what skill do the exact same thing? If you guessed it, you're right. It is Sharpen Stone. Sharpen Stone with no support. It is 8-second 1 stack of bleed for each stack that it do for 176 damage. So what is the maximum possible if you put everything into condition damage? How high will that damage be? So in this build, it is full condition damage, Trailblazer, Criterion and stuff. It's 1k and a half and 100% bleed duration, and we're running also hidden barbs trait. And Sharpen Stone is 16 seconds, double the time obviously, from 8 seconds to the double, and it is 2k and 400. If we merge with the bit, it is even more obviously and stuff like that. If you get Might, it's more, but that is the highest possible. However, let's see how it is with our Druid. If we run with the normal Druid build that I'm playing most of the time, hidden barbs and the same skills, it is the same build but I'm missing with few things, but the same gear, the same everything. With the anti-toxin rune, it is 1k 200 plus, and on staff it is a little bit less. So it's around 1k 200. That's it. Every 8 seconds you can apply it to 5 targets. It has a good side and a downside. Compared to Sharpened Stone, which you can apply in insane burst. Obviously you can run both, but I'm talking about the application. Sharpened Stone is 10 stacks, no matter what happens, and have a 30-second cooldown. However, Blood Moon can be possibly applied to 5 targets each 8 seconds. So mean if you keep applying it, obviously every 8 seconds to 5 targets, one of them will take 1 stack of Sharpened Stone. However, if you use Sharpened Stone and hit everyone around you with Glyph of Equality, it diluted Sharpened Stone among them. Everyone got 1 stack and you only have another 5. If you hit the same people around you 1 hit more, that means everyone got 2 stacks and Sharpened Stone is gone and you need to wait for 30 seconds, not 8. In 16 seconds only, you can do exactly what you did with Sharpened Stone if you daze 5 people once every 8 seconds, and that's only in 16 second cooldown, not 30. So in a perfect situation, it's very useful comparing even Sharpened Stone, but that doesn't change the reality. It is 1 stack and it's barely annoying to the enemy around you. It doesn't do much of anything. It's very low damage, as you can see here. That's 1 stack. It's 126 and will keep balls in this very low annoying number. It's barely adding to your damage. It's very small. Maybe you say it's good if you run it because of the days, it's like the disable around you, so that's a good thing. It's an interrupt, it's a CC, but you're giving up druidic clarity for it. So the condition removal of 3 condition to you and the allies around you, you lose the survivability, you gain a small days with tick of bleeding. So I'm not sure. Obviously I will be testing this, but it doesn't look promising. It's survivability comparing to a tiny bit of aggression in the build, I guess. Now let's move on. Natural Balance, a new trait to replace Natural Stride. So Natural Stride, in my opinion, was quite useless trait. It's very comfortable to use in PvE especially. It's almost no necessary ever to use in a competitive play. Even so, I used it in the early iteration of the build. I liked how comfortable it was, but let's talk about this trait. It giving you 33% movement speed, which basically you can get on almost any ranger build. If you're using a bird with a soul beast, you can gain swiftness, which is 33%. If you're on a condition build, you can get it through tailwind from skirmishing minor, you will always have it. You can get it from short bow 3, you can get it from warhorn if you're on warhorn. So if you can get it from a lot of sources. Command skills, if they are supported with the trait of resounding timber. So many of the builds, it doesn't matter what you build, you will always have swiftness. Swiftness can be corrupted or removed, you can have it still multiple sources, but that thing cannot. So, but that's a very low value. It also gives you lower the condition duration of embedded movement skills like immobilize, chill and cripple. However, you have a lot of cleanses as a ranger, whether you're using wilderness knowledge, wilderness survival, or whether you're technically a druid, so you would have druid clarity, you would have the trap, you would have survivor skills. Whatever you would have, you would remove them better obviously than simply lowering the effect of them. So Natural Stride was quite useless, especially it compete with Celestial Shadows, which means stealth and super speed, and also compete with protection while on using glyphs if you're playing support. I sometimes could use it in PvE and stuff, but I don't mind the change, because Natural Balance is actually granting you 10% condition damage, 10% condition duration, lowering the power damage applied to you by 10% for 5 seconds every time you enter or leave Celestial Avatar. So it is quite a strong trait in a way if you put it in a very good rotation. Now the last trait to change is Eclipse, and it replaced Ancient Seed. So after 7 years of playing this build since the release of Heart of Thorn, they removed Ancient Seed. And I'm not sure they looked into the significance of what they did into fixing everything around it. So they said that Ancient Seed created a playstyle that's very bad, that they want to simply remove it. This immobilize after immobilize, it annoying to player and stuff like that. They are the same people that said Ancient Seed roots die so easily. Not the same people, but I mean developers said it. can die melt easily in Zergs, so they are not really that powerful in World vs World. So I guess Arenet at least looking into rooming now. But if you do, then why not do the same about the worst immobilized build in the game, which is immobilized Rifle Deadeye. Immobilized Thief have the worst immobilized in the game because it does not have cooldown. It can used only through initiative from very far, easily repeated. It's on a power build, so it's very difficult to survive. And it doesn't matter that it doesn't balls like the roots that you can kill or immediately walk out and you don't get the balls from, because they can simply keep pressing the same button applying immobilize once after another. And as you can see in this fight, for example, I'm fighting a Druid and an immobilized Deadeye, probably one of the best who played. Immobilized Deadeye is rare to begin with. Not many people notice how powerful this build is, and I'm almost ignoring the Druid, because immobilized Deadeye can kill me in seconds, while the Druid not. And they combo that with Sword 2, so they board to you and immobilize you. So you combo that with Ball like the Wires, you combo that with other skills that do immobilize. And they can board and hunt you, they can stealth, they can use projectile defense on themselves, they can wait you out. They can put so many skills to put immobilize and simply use one after another. I complained about similar things when they changed the staff for Druid and removed the evade, and I talked about the Renegade, the Revenant staff, because it used to still evade, create distance, and even do CC with a lot of damage, but the damage got removed and they made it pause before they actually do the movement, so they nerfed it in the end also to be a little bit fair. So if you want to remove this play style, remove it for everyone, not only Druid. That's my first complaint. However, there is more into this. So Eclipse trait, for example, let's talk about it first. What that trait do, it will make every Celestia avatar skill offensively augmented, as they say. So it will apply condition to the enemies it hit, not only it will apply what it does of healing to the allies hit. So first skill would apply 8 seconds of vulnerability, second skill which can be casted even while disabled, 4 seconds of poison, the healing seed, and the third skill, Lunar Impact, will apply 1 second of immobilize. The fourth skill, the Pulsing Field of Healing, will apply 2 seconds of chill. And since it's pulsing, I think it will be 2 seconds of chills each pulse. And the fifth skill, also at pulsing, Natural Conversion, will apply 1 second of burn, and my guess it's also on every pulse. So let's talk about a problem with that. The numbers of the damage that's possible to get from this, from poison and burning, are significantly low, in my understanding. And even if they have a 10-second cooldown on Celestia Avatar, so it's similar to the Ancient Seed itself, it is still, you need to use a lot of those skills and apply them, and 2 only do damage, and 1 of them even in melee range. Besides, the numbers is quite low, it's 4 seconds here and 1 second here, and as a druid or ranger generally, you will never really build in burning, and most of the time will not even build in poison, it's not worth it. So does that compare to 10k or between 9 to 12k damage from the root on everyone around you? So as they trying to push a damage DPS, they're running it for PvE numbers. I'm not sure how this will work for competitive play. However, yes, you can argue that some of these conditions are quite aggressive and will over the cover condition play that Druid generally lack a little bit. However, Natural Conversion, for example, you do decent power damage and the last hit do a lot. It simply pulses multiple times, cripple and slow, and the last hit will be huge damage and will apply a black hole effect to everyone that already took it. And that black hole effect is pulse and immobilize, just like the roots. When you cast Natural Conversion, you cannot move skill 5 and Celestia Avatar, and it takes 2.5 seconds to cast, which means generally what we used to do is we cast Lunar Impact, and the first hit will happen from Natural Conversion will immobilize everyone because it will trigger Ancient Seed. Everyone now immobilized, they can't walk away, so they eat this damage, or they react accordingly and cleanse and dodge and leave the area simply so you don't eat the damage you do, or simply block it even. Now if the skill is still the same, which we don't really know, it takes 2.5 seconds cast time while you still stuck in place and everyone can simply walk. Even if you immobilize them with Lunar Impacts, it's 1 second. Even if you have 100% condition duration, it's 2 seconds, not 2.5. Everyone will simply walk out from this skill. Druid used to have all its skills simply healing and cleansing, nothing focus on damage or do anything about it except Ancient Seed. So it was the major design if you want to do any damage, which Natural Conversion fall into. You will always immobilize the enemy and start doing your action. If you remove this, you need to look into the things that used to work with it. Natural Conversion have almost no way of landing. You need at least 3 seconds of CC possible to keep the enemy around. You don't have that. You don't have knockdown for 3 seconds. The barely things you could do is either use Elite as an entangle to actually catch people inside it and then trigger the Natural Conversion, or use something like Roots from Jacaranda. The simple mechanic from Druid itself doesn't much exist no more. It's very difficult to land such a skill. So I hope Arianet look into it and fix it. At least make the cast time faster and keep the stability on it. Obviously, I don't know, but you need to fix this. In the end, I don't think the damage will compensate for the huge amount of damage that we were able to use it as a bleed from Ancient Seed itself, but I guess we will see once the patch launches. Now, Glyph of Alignment increased bleeding duration for 8 seconds, from 8 seconds to 10 seconds in PvE only. I guess with traps being really this bad at this point, you will have to use something like the Glyph as a better choice, I guess. And Glyph of Equality, non-Celestial version gets the stability just like the Celestial version, but also in PvE only. Natural Mender, the trait increase Astral Force generation from 5 to 8 in PvE only. It came to WordPress Award but not PvE, so now it's in PvE, and it feeds very nicely with another trait that's coming, which is Lingering Light. This trait no longer grants increased outgoing healing after exiting Celestial Avatar, which used to do that while granting extra heal to allies in general. Instead, it reduces recharge for Celestial Avatar every time another player gets healed by a Celestial Avatar skill. From what I understand from the streaming, that it will grant kind of a charges, and the amount of charges you get, you will actually reduce cooldown for it. So having Celestial Avatar also generate faster from Natural Mender very much fall into this, because it's needed if you're gonna have Celestial Avatar faster than 10 seconds. Cosmic Ray also got increased radius by 100 from 120 to 240, and it is needed, especially for trait like Eclipse. It was a very bad radius anyway. It's very annoying to use, it doesn't heal as much, no one was really using this skill at all. So now it is better, I guess. And it will fall into granting Alacrity from Grace of the Land. Now that's it for Druid, and I will be testing everything, looking into every possibility, and we'll see how this go once this balanced batch launches. Spiritual Reprieve, which is skilled for merging with your pet for Soul Beast. Now cast time reduced from 1.5 seconds to 1 second, and the cooldown from 40 to 35, which is a very welcome change, honestly. Now let's get into Untamed, the second class that got really slapped, I guess, beside Druid. So Untamed got Fervent Force removed. Let's start from the bottom to see how all this work. So Fervent Force got removed completely, which they already kinda told us they wanted to work it, or remove it, or whatever. So no longer you're gonna have CC to reset your cooldown, which will affect your DPS, your access to skills, boons and stuff, and your sustainability. Your healing skill will no longer keep losing cooldown every time you CC the enemy. And it got replaced by a trait called Let Loose. This trait will grant boon to nearby allies when using Unleash Ambush skill. This boon is actually quickness, so that means you will be able to build a quickness Untamed as a choice. So you have a Alacrity Droid or a quickness Untamed as a support form, I guess. And it will recharge your Unleash Ambush skill when you swap weapons. So to compensate for the fact that you will not be resetting your skills with CC anymore, Rending Vines, which is skill 2 for the Unleashed pet, reduce cooldown from 15 to 10 in PvE, and Enveloping Haze, which the projectile defense one, got to reduce cooldown from 25 to 20 in PvE. Now, Unleashed Power, which is basically the traits that allow you to do the Unleash Ambush skill, used to have a 15-second cooldown and will be lowered in 9 in PvE only. So this was a bad design to begin with. It meant you only want to use the Unleash Ambush skill that's actually more useful. Usually, or normally, you would have 2 weapons. One of those weapons have a skill that will benefit you more, or you want it more. So you use this skill either 2 times before you rotate to other weapon, or if you rotate to the other weapon, you wait, even you have it off cooldown because it's 15, until you get to the weapon you want to use it on. So for my main build, for example, I used Axe and Shortbow in PvE. Short bow skill is very slow, sluggish, and do a very low damage. It's not that useful. While the axe skill is very strong, do insane amount of damage, and heal for every hit. It is very good. So I would use it and wait until it come again of cooldown, use it, and then move to the other weapon. So it would have 15-second cooldown, and I will get to my weapon and use it again. And once I get to finish the rotation, I would do the same. Because the weapon swipe cooldown is 10, while the skill itself is 15. Now they reduced it to 9, so you were able to use both of skill weapon. You will never retain from using short bow. For example, you would use the axe, you would move normally with the rotation, and then you would use short bow, and now you will have the axe skill again. Now also they increased bar coefficient for some of the unleash ambush skills, greatsword, sword, and hammer, and longbow. Also for restorative strike, the trade that I run with my power Untamed build got nerfed in a way, I guess. This trait no longer passively converts strike damage to healing. It used to a percentage of your healing, 10%, turn this strike damage as power damage only into healing for you, and it grants protection on cooldown each time you enter or leave. Now this protection increased from 2 seconds to 3. However, it now only will convert strike damage to healing when you or your bit unleash. So I guess it is timed. Like it gives you a duration of healing and then the thing ends. So you would keep rotating. So I'm not very sure how it works, if it will have an effect duration, like it will be like 3 seconds like the protection. I'm not sure how it will work, but it will give you a window, a specific window of how you would turn your damage into healing. So also the power build got nerfed for survivability purposes. So I guess we will see how much this will affect Untamed once it launches. So Druid got crazy changes, Untamed also got nerfed significantly or changed. Tell me what you think in the comment. If I missed anything or any information that I don't have, put it in the comments. That will be it for the video, and I'll be seeing you next time. Peace.